Great. Well, it's great to see folks. Welcome to our back to school edition of Schools and the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm Jonathan Klein. I'm a co-founder with Undaunted K-12. We're really excited to see folks. Let me drop, oh, Steph, thanks. The meeting agenda and notes are in the chat. Same format as we've been using for, I think, a little over a year now, for just a rolling agenda of links and resources for this network of allies working across the country to help schools make the most of the Inflation Reduction Act. Just a few kind of notes on norms. If you can add your name and organization in the agenda to the meeting participants list, we really appreciate that. It's helpful for us to kind of just remember who was here and who's getting this information. We have a few group norms. We just ask everyone to participate with respect, humility, generosity of spirit. We are a network trying to level each other up and learn from each other and increase coordination and opportunity for students and schools, and the opportunity to decarbonize and make them healthier, safer, more resilient places for kids. We also try to default to video on, cameras on and microphones muted. So if your camera off right now and you can come off and, and just kind of look at folks for this hour, we appreciate it. If there's something going on in your world and you need to be camera off, that's fine. And then just come off mute or raise your hand and we'll try to bring voices in as we are having the conversation. We also try to share the airtime. This is a great turnout for this time together today. So if you've had a chance to make a comment verbally, maybe you make your next one in the chat to give folks with hands raised the opportunity to speak, so that we kind of give everybody opportunities to contribute. And we are recording these calls and posting them to our YouTube channel so that participants can share with their communities. And this is because this list has grown bigger and people sometimes need to watch and kind of catch up afterwards. So I'm going to just, actually, before I kind of get into the agenda, one of the things we usually do at the top of these calls is we just give folks for whom this is their first call a chance to just quickly come off mute and say hello, name and organization, and just say hello to the group. So do we have any first-time callers or participants today? Sure, Angie, you want to go?
Yeah, hi. I'm Angie Garling. I'm the Senior Vice President for Early Care and Education at the Low Income Investment Fund. We mostly work in the early education space, so childcare, preschool, all of that. But I met Jonathan and been introduced to him and referred to him that I should be really tracking the work that you're all doing, because we really think of ourselves as one of the organizations at the nexus of early learning, climate, and the built environment. Happy to be here.
Michael?
Yeah, I'm Michael Anderson. I'm the Senior Manager for the Community Solutions Team at Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships. We're the regional energy efficiency organization for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. And my team works to advance any kind of decarbonization initiatives or programs at the community level.
Jillian?
Hi, Jillian Blanchard. It's really great to be here. I'm the director of the Climate Change and Environmental Justice Program at Lawyers for Good Government, working on all things IRA implementation, in particular elective pay. So grateful to be here.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Jack. I am an organizer for Northern Plains Resource Council in Montana. We're a grassroots conservation and family ag group. And we do a lot of work in the energy realm. So yeah, it's great to be here and great to see everybody.
Yeah, good to see you, Jack. And we have a new member of the team at Undaunted. Sky, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name's Sky. I joined the Undaunted team about 2 months ago, and I've been helping with some of our IRA and schools database projects. So I think I've also met a couple of you via email, so it's nice to meet you all face to face, and thanks for being here.
Awesome. Anybody else? Okay, I'm just going to quickly share my screen here. Thanks to those who have added their organization and names here on meeting participants. We've got a great agenda. We are through, I think, the welcome and introductions. I'm going to pass things off in just a sec to Sarah for some highlights on what's new in IRA land. Then we've got just some updates on events, media, and resources. And then we have two sort of resource spotlight conversations today. One, a new Clean Energy Tax Navigator from Lawyers for Good Government and Partners. Jillian is here to talk about that. And then Sky and I are eager to share and have a conversation about the new schools and IRA database that we launched publicly last week. And then we'll try to have some time at the end for other updates within the network. So if that sounds good to folks, why don't I pass things off to Sarah for what's new in IRA land?
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. Nice to see you all. Hope your summers were wonderful. So a standing part of our agenda is to talk about what's new in IRA land. And this is specifically kind of what's new in terms of the pushing out of this policy, new guidance, new piece of the IRA. So we bucketed some new stuff here. I'm just going to highlight a few of the ones in green here if you want to follow along. So there's yet another grant program. You know, a lot of the times within this call, we are talking about tax credits, but there are grant opportunities within IRA. Two of them are mentioned here, and I wanted to highlight that USGBC, I think Phoebe's on maybe, is offering help for schools to apply for money through the Community Change Grant Program. So you've got a link to click on there and a deadline in November, which will be here faster than we know it. In the guidance section, I just wanted to highlight domestic content. So for those of you that are tracking projects closely, this is a big gnarly new piece of making projects, and specifically projects over 1 megawatt work and maximum credit. And the IRS released guidance that provide a safe harbor for solar projects. So if you're doing a solar project, you can kind of pick and choose or kind of identify the pieces that you are domestically sourcing from a list of components of a solar energy system, and that will help you meet the threshold for meeting domestic content. We don't yet have that for geothermal projects. The Geo Exchange, an industry association, offered comments to the IRS for how to do that well for that other technology to ease kind of the process of meeting domestic content. So that's a big gnarly one. Keep an eye on if you are in the weeds on projects. And then I'm just going to lastly skip down to the process updates. And Jillian is more the expert on this than I am, and I'm actually referring you here to one of her great resources. Now is the time, if you don't track this closely, when schools are really got to be moving with their feet on this first filing deadline of November 15th. Nonprofits must e-file, but our schools, as instrumentalities of the state, can do a paper filing, and many of them are. In part because e-filing services can be expensive, and in part because, as Jillian knows well, some of those e-filing platforms don't actually have all the pieces that folks need to e-file for these new clean energy tax credits. So some more details there in the link, and just know that there is some confusion and schools need to be sorting through and getting their filing soon. Jillian, anything you want to add on while I'm there?
Two thoughts for folks who are struggling. Number one, as Sarah put the fine point on it, folks really do need to get into the pre-registration portal. We're hearing that there are going to be more and more delays because there's so many people trying to use the portal at the same time, which is also why IRS has put out some new office hours. If you have portal questions, you can ask, you can go to those. They are somewhat frustrating, but you can get good intel. And then the last thing is we are working really hard to get an approved e-filer who actually has the right forms for elective pay. As soon as we have that, I will share it with Sarah so that she can share it out to all of you. Fingers crossed that comes out in early September for everybody to be able to use for either low bono or even pro bono if they're under-resourced schools to file for elective pay.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are my what's new in IRA and schools land. If folks want to add on other things that I missed, because I always miss something and you guys always help me get more things on the list, please feel free to add on. And I am going to pass it to Jonathan to keep going here so that we have time for the good 2 new resource spotlights we have. So feel free to add in new items there on what's new. And Jonathan, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Sarah and Jillian. So I think on this item 3, the events, media, resources, we're just trying to curate when someone someplace in the country does an event, with the webinar and some slides around IRA, we're putting it here. If you have any that are not on this list that you want to add, since we were last together, please do. Just a couple notes on future events and also, feel free to add to this future events list. I will be in Arizona for this convening in on direct pay and elective pay. Would love to see you all. And if you have Arizona folks or folks that are going to be there that want to talk about schools, please send them my way. Sarah will be at the ASBO conference on September 18th, so send your school business officers, to our session and be there. And then Sarah Heine from our team will be in Wisconsin for Forward Together Wisconsin's, big convening on the Inflation Reduction Act. So another thing, say hello if you're there or send people our way and add to this list, if you have stuff going on. Oh, great. It'll be good to see you there, Jillian. On resources, just one to highlight here, these annotated tax forms from the Lighthouse cohort. I think I've got them open and I can share my, someone might need to mute. I can share my screen here. So if you click on the annotated tax forms, this is a resource, I think from Lawyers for Good Government, right? You kind of see, the set of links. If you click in here on annotated forms, it's actually, like a form that based on like some of the early experiences working with filers, what do you need to pay attention to? What's important? We've started to find that these can be really helpful out there for folks starting to do this work. So just a quick highlight on that one. And then, we are always looking to gather stories, in the media covering the impact of the IRA and elective pay in schools. So we shared a few recent ones that we've seen. And if there are others that you have either seen or helped create, please add them here so we can kind of keep pushing them out through channels. So I think that's it for this section. And maybe Sarah, I will pass it back to you to kind of get started on the Clean Energy Tax Navigator conversation.
Great. We're rolling. Thanks for rolling with us. And a big thanks to Jillian for the awesome work that her team has done to create this new Clean Energy Tax Navigator and for coming today to talk about the work. It's in its early stages. She did a big push to launch it. So Jillian, thanks for coming. Why don't you give your little spiel about who you are, Lawyers for Good Government, what this navigator is, get us into the introduction of this exciting work. And then you and I will test drive a few projects as we talked about so that folks can see it live, and hopefully we'll have some time to then engage the group on, how they think, having seen it live here for a moment, they might use this in their work.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so Jillian Blanchard with Lawyers for Good Government. And if you're not familiar with our work, we are a nationwide network of over 120,000 legal advocates in all 50 states. So we kind of have this army of attorneys that we like to throw at problems. And in this space, having an army of attorneys when complicated IRA regulations come out and Treasury regulations come out was really, really helpful in the elective pay space. And our mission is really to make sure that the historic federal funding is equitably distributed. So really focusing on elective pay to get resources out there to make it easier for public sector entities like school districts to use and leverage elective pay is a big, big priority. So for the past year and a half, we've been doing lots of things in terms of pushing out high-level resources, but also doing some direct services to about 60 cities in that Lighthouse cohort and others, communities, as well as some state agencies, to try and help them file for elective pay. And through that process, we've built a lot of the resources that Sarah has shared with a lot of our nonprofit partners. And we thought, well, this is still really hard. Can we put it all in one place to make it easier for people to find all the resources based on just walking through a specific project? And that is what the Clean Energy Tax Navigator is meant to do. It is focused on how do we coordinate all of these amazing resources together in one place to make it easier for you to find them as you go through to trying to determine eligibility for your project, and give you guidance on how to file in the end if you determine your eligibility. So as Sarah said, this is beta, we're in the beta phase. It's definitely usable. We wanted to push it out in advance of the November 15th deadline for folks, in giving them additional time to use the pre-registration portal that they need to do in advance, as Sarah was just talking about. So it does have kinks that we are working out, and we look forward to feedback. There's a submission form at the end of the Navigator. We are constantly trying to iterate and improve with Sarah, with so many others, and we welcome your feedback. But this is our first foray. So what the Navigator does do is walk you through on a project-specific basis, either those projects that are in construction, have been completed, or are in concept phase, and fall into one of these 3 buckets, which encompass about 6 of the 12 eligible credits in elective pay. So your EV vehicle purchases, your electric vehicle charging and infrastructure, and then your what's the investment tax credit, production tax credit under solar, wind, geothermal. And that encompasses 6 credits. Therefore, it does not cover the other 6 credits that are eligible for elective pay, like carbon capture and hydrogen. So it's not going to do that for you. It's also not going to calculate your tax credit. So just want to set expectations on that. It's really meant to help you access the most useful and relevant resources and guidance that we have around how to determine eligibility. So that is where it is right now in its current stage of iteration. And with that in mind, Sarah, should I just walk through some rules of the road before we drive around?
Sure.
So first and foremost, if you are playing around with it, we welcome that. However, if it's not a real project, we request that you put in the word test. And the reason is because this is our one-stop shop effort to give you all resources in one place to determine eligibility and file. But it also is a place where you can ask specific questions at the end if your questions were not answered. And Sarah, we'll get to that as we go through the walkthrough. And those questions are reviewed on the back end by L4GG with our pro bono network to answer them either through our FAQs, if many of you have seen our FAQs that we publish, or if you're eligible for direct technical assistance and pro bono assistance from our attorneys, we will reach out to you directly for some one-on-one assistance. So it's really important that folks enter real projects, and if they're testing it, that's totally fine. Just put in test, so we don't try and provide pro bono assistance for projects that aren't real. And the other rules of the road that I just want to flag here that we'll walk through is just to take your time. It's the kind of thing where it really is meant to provide those fact sheets and resources on the right panel. As we go through, you'll see, and we want folks to be able to take their time to go through that. So even in our test drive today, Sarah and I probably won't be taking the time that we recommend you take to look at all the requirements, because as they like to say in the tech world, garbage in, garbage out. So we want to make sure that what input you put in the Navigator is accurate, so that what it gives you back is accurate. And that might require you looking at the right to some fact sheets and reading them and saying, oh, these are prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. Okay, I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to find out if my project complies, and then I'll come back and answer the Navigator correctly. You can always come back to the Navigator. You'll receive an email that says, hey, you haven't finished your form, and you can use that email to come back. I think that's it for now, and the rest of it we can just walk through, Sarah, as we test drive.
Great. So you all are seeing my screen, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm gonna play smart dummy user here and go and enter some projects that I'm familiar with. And Jillian, you just kind of narrate along, and I may throw things in. So I'm gonna start with a geothermal project that's happening here in Massachusetts. So I'm gonna start. So you do have to start with your technology as the first step here.
Right. And one little flag here while Sarah's doing this. You'll see the little pop-up on the right. They want you to enter the name of the entity that's going to be filing for elective pay. So that's, not necessarily undaunted.
Okay.
And the reason being is we want the Navigator to give good intel based on who's filing. So whether, and that's the same when you're asked what type of organization, et cetera. So that's the first flag. Also, your project name in tiny print, you'll see there that it needs to be a specific name to your project. We've had experiences where folks enter in a project title that is the same, coincidentally, as another project title that someone's entered, and then there's an error. So let's see what happens when we hit next.
like solar, maybe. Might be
Right,
something.
like Solar One is probably not going to get you far.
Okay.
Hey, it worked. Okay, great. So again, this is an organization type. You'll want to answer it as if you are the entity filing for elective pay to make sure you get good intel. So we've got a school district here, obviously, right, Sarah?
Yep.
Okay, great. And then the next one is really kind of what best describes you. Either A, you don't know anything about the IRA, or E, you know quite a bit. And if you clicked A, what it would do is give you a Direct Pay 101 new tab. You can even click on that if you want, Sarah. It won't take you out. But you can see at the top, the navigator is still open, but this is an option as an off-ramp. If you really don't know much about Direct Pay, to watch one of these webinars, get up to speed, and then come back. And ultimately, we hope to work with you all to have an even more specific webinar for school districts that can be added to this 101 page. So let's say you learned quite a bit and you're ready to, a bit more. You're in the D category or the E category. Either one works.
Yeah, in this case, like we have a project and it's happening and we're going to keep moving forward. So we're interested in eligibility.
Okay, so these questions are really, the first one is my project completed and placed in service already, or is it in construction too, or is it in concept phase? So which one is it for you, Sarah? In construction?
I think it's gonna be, they haven't put shovels in the ground yet, so I think I'm in this last bucket of still out in the latest. So
okay,
moving forward.
And then this is going to ask you, like, what kind of help do you want? And this is different things will pop up based on what kind of help you want. Like if you've got solar, wind, or geothermal. So you say, Sarah's clicked, I want help with the bonus adders, and you'll see on the right a fact sheet to the bonus adders. Again, that's the kind of thing you want to look at slowly, take your time. We're going to drive a little fast on this road, but you get the picture. That's one of those places that will give you more information. And one of the things, if you scroll back up real quickly there, Sarah, you've clicked one of the first three boxes, which are all about pre-filing and filing. So because of that, if you click those, what'll happen is you get the pop-up on the right, first three boxes, one of those three, there you go. And then if you were to click on that orange attachment at the bottom there, it's another off-ramp. If you're like, I already know my eligibility, I just want to file, give me the guidance on using the portal, the annotated tax forms that Jonathan was talking about, and even the e-filing guidance that Sarah was talking about. Once again, it's all in one place. You can click on any one of those, and we're managing it on the back end to get you the most up-to-date info that we can. So that's another off-ramp if you don't want to go through the whole process, if you just want to get to that filing. And that'll be available at the end too. So you're clicking which bonus adder you need assistance with, what type, is it ITC, PTC, with lots of fact sheets on the right to help you answer that question. All right, do you know when it might be placed in service? And we have a little tooltip on the right. Once again, always go to the right if you don't know how to answer the question. It'll give you a little guidance on on definitions and rules and general rules of thumb. Do you plan to own your project? The answer is yes.
I said no for a second, or unsure, and got this nice pop-up on partnerships, which helped me answer a question I had for another school district. So thank you for that.
Oh, great. Great.
Well, there we go. We got ourselves into a little.
Yeah, now that you've put unsure, it wants to know that there you go. So since this is another good rule of the road. The navigator is meant to be linear. So when you hit previous, you can trip it up a little bit. And that looks like what we've done here. So go ahead and put number 1, that you believe your co-ownership is eligible. Okay. And that will help you get past this. Because otherwise it would tell you, hey, you're in a partnership that doesn't seem eligible. And it will give you the DQ form. If you get to the end with confetti, you win. Your preliminary determination is that you're eligible. Otherwise, you might have an off-ramp of disqualification. Okay. Do you have funding for the project? Yep. Okay, great. You're good to go. Since it's municipal.
Some combination. Yeah.
Combination. Okay. So then it would give you a fact sheet on the right about the no excess benefit rule, so that you know, oh, it's not popping up there. See, once again, that's a little glitch that our developer's working on. But if you click number 2 there, Sarah, that fact sheet describing the no excess benefit rule would pop up, because restricted grants plus elective pay can limit how much you can claim for elective pay. So there's a rule there for you to read, look at your own grant financing source and say, hey, wait a minute. Okay, now I think I know I might need to reduce my elective pay amount by a certain bit. That's something we couldn't do just in a, you know, an automated form like this. That takes a lot of calculation on the back end. So we just give you the rules of thumb so that you can do it. Now it wants to know if you know about your Buy American requirements. Sarah's a fast driver. And it gives you those requirements on the right so that you can do that. Wants to know where your project is located. This helps in a variety of ways for us on the back end when we're determining eligibility for pro bono. One of the ways we prioritize pro bono is need, location in an energy community. Which is the next question right there. And Sarah, you know for sure that you're an energy community. If you didn't, there's a link to the Department of Energy map that you could literally plug your address in. And then you know what kind it is. It's a brownfield. If you didn't, there's guidance. That's just a bonus credit map to help you figure out if you might be in a eligible bonus map. But the CGS map is the main one to help answer that question, that first link there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are in it, then what it'll tell you is, hey, there's a reminder, you might be eligible for the low-income communities bonus. There's a fact sheet. And here, if you're going to say the size of your project, as many of you know, right? If you're greater than 1 megawatt, that means you need to comply with the prevailing wage and domestic content requirements, and it will tell you exactly what those are. Now it wants to know a bit more about helping you kind of determine whether or not you're complying with domestic content. If you'll be able to get that information, because that's also going to help us on the back end if you have questions about domestic content.
Mm.
And again, if you're not sure or no, you get a request of information on the right to help you make that determination. The rest of these questions are really going to help us determine if you're eligible for pro bono. And then this last, for those folks that want to get questions answered in pro bono, I would upload those documents. They're really helpful for all of us and making sure we get you good TA on the back end. Another rule of the road and rule of thumb is if you are entering questions, which is the next box Sarah's going to come to, you want to be as detailed as possible, because that's really going to help us get you answers faster. And that will come in on our end of the back end into our database. And yay, Sarah made it. She's eligible. That project is eligible. So now you have other options. You can go to the Project Finance Hub to learn about financing. You can go back to that filing link that I was telling you about, if you're ready to file. Additional resources, which is just our main webpage. Or if you scroll up a little bit there, Sarah, or the other way, you can start a new project. Or you could give us the very important feedback. You'll see the feedback form is kind of highlighted below there. Our developers are making that font even bigger so people see it, because we really want your feedback.
Great. Awesome. So Jillian, we have about 5 minutes. That's why I was driving fast, because I wanted to give people a taste, and I wanted to get to just open it up to have people react a little bit to how they might use, or how they might have already used, because maybe they've seen one of your great webinars already and have been using this. So I want to open it up, raise hands, and I'll stop sharing here because I do want to just get into it. Have folks already used this tool? How might they imagine using this tool? How is this going to show up? And I don't know if I can see all the hands. Has anyone already been in this tool? Is this new to folks? Oh, we're rusty. See, over the summer, you all got shy. What's happening?
Yeah, we need feedback. What preliminary thoughts?
And I think, like, often I could imagine that this tool could be really useful for a school district facilities director, sustainability manager, CFO, school business officer, who's just kind of like, okay, Gen 180 or Center for Green Schools or Undaunted told me about this thing. Riley was talking about this thing, and now I've got to figure it out. And so they're in it. How can you imagine, this tool, complementing the work that that you're doing with, school districts? Is, I think, another way to frame the question too.
I'll just make a comment as someone who feels pretty informed on IRA. It looks very helpful for me. Very early on, we made a flow chart that kind of simulated this process, and it's complicated. So I think I don't know how many district personnel I would feel, safe, turning loose on something like that. But with guidance, I think it's a great tool to use collaboratively. So I really appreciate it.
Guided tour, I like that.
Yeah, and we have trainings coming up, lots of trainings. We are even potentially going to do, if I can entice Sarah, a training just for school districts on how to use the Navigator. We have one coming up this Thursday with cities, which is going to be the same type of guidance we might provide to school districts, but happy to provide more tailored one just for schools and the types of projects that may come up for schools.
Great. Joe, I see your hand up.
Yeah. Thank you, Jillian. Really, really informative. What can we do as ground source heat pump manufacturers to provide assistance and get the word out? Is it possible for us as a manufacturer to sponsor webinars to get the word out so that you can educate consumers? And because we'd be really happy to do this. I mean, we deal with these questions on a daily basis, and we do our best to walk our customers and schools through the process. As far as we know right now, we're still waiting some guidance on domestic content, for example. We spent several weeks to meet on the June 15th deadline to get the safe harbor documentation into Treasury, and we're still waiting on some results from that and continue to reach out there. But anything we could do as a manufacturer, as an organization, as GeoExchange, for example, or IGSPA, to help promote, I think we're certainly really take the lead on making that happen.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Joe. I'm going to put the trainings webpage in the link so that you can share at least the upcoming trainings. I also will put my email in the chat so that you can reach out if there's more specific targeted trainings you want to set up. We have some partners who can help us run those trainings and do a lot of that logistics for us. But I would recommend, if we do it, that we kind of get as many folks in one place. And when I say folks, I mean applicable entities. So those end users that are going to have those eligible clean energy projects in one place, so you get a lot of bang for our buck. But I'll put those links in the chat so you can share that with folks. And we also have a one-page overview of the tool, if that might be helpful. So maybe rather than just put it all in the chat, I should send an email to Sarah with those overview documents so you can share with everybody.
Or you can put it, if you want, you can, you have access to this running notes doc too. So you can go
great.
Add links right in there, and everyone will then have access to it. So
that sounds great. I will do that.
Do it yourself. Okay, last call for thoughts on how you might use this tax navigator in your work. And then Jillian, I want to give you just like 60 seconds on help for districts in filing. You mentioned that a few times that there's some pro bono, opportunities here. Are you doing that yet? Do you have any schools? What might that look like for schools? How would folks make that handoff, capacity? What's the quick elevator pitch on the pro bono work for schools that's possible?
Yeah, I think the best way to get into the pro bono work with us would be to use the navigator and then shoot an email to me to let me know that you've used it. And it's for a priority school district, et cetera. So that was going to help us in the back end set up that TA and have the info we need for whatever their projects are. So even if you've maybe there's multiple projects and you want this one entity to get that, if you can clarify that in an email to us, that these 5 entries, this one school district, why they might need the TA, that will help move them up in the queue and will let me know that I'm kind of working with you all on it. And it will give us the info we need into our database to get that TA happening.
And the type of TA here, is this again focused on eligibility? Might this go into how many dollars do we think this could be worth for us? Might it go all the way into, I gotta fill out this 990T and I love your annotations, but I'm still confused, says, a teacher I have in Kansas whose business officer told him to figure out himself, for example.
Yeah. It can be all of the above. I obviously need to be realistic and can't promise that everyone's going to get pro bono TA. It's based on priority and bandwidth, et cetera. But But I think all of those things would be potentially incorporated into the type of one-on-one TA they can get with a pro bono attorney. Filing guidance, they'd obviously have to sign a retention letter so that we can give them that tailored guidance. But that's why using the Navigator will really help them in the entry point into what we call our Clean Energy Clinic.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. We're going to switch gears here, but thank you so much, Jillian, for coming on. You're getting comments in the chat. Oh, Elika wants to chat. I see Elika. She can't raise her hand, but she wants to
Yeah,
know.
I couldn't raise my hand. I could unmute. I don't know where the button is. I don't know what's going on with my Zoom app today. Usually it's right there. No, but just initial reactions. So one, I have not seen this tool before, so I'm excited that something like this is being developed. I mean, for the business officer, like having anything that's kind of intuitive, like a TurboTax, like kind of ask me 50 questions, fill this sort of thing out to direct them or help them find more information about, whether a project could potentially qualify, or to learn what some of those bonus adders are. Like, I think this is super helpful. If it's okay, would love to add this just to the ongoing resources that we share with our members when we're talking about the IRA and our federal updates that we do for folks. Always love to be able to highlight, here's something new that can like really help you have these conversations with your team. What I've heard anecdotally, from some CFOs is they definitely want the school facility director to be, leading the initial kind of legwork, looking to see if projects do qualify. And then once some of that initial kind of legwork has been done to say, yes, this is something that potentially does qualify, then that's when they want the SBO to be pulled into those sort of conversations. Obviously, it just depends on where the district is at, when they're examining projects that are maybe already in the pipeline where this could help offset, some of the cost of projects, then yes, of course, the business office would want to be pulled in at that point. I think when you're still very much in the potential project planning process, again, that's where it's like it's more beneficial to really be sharing these type of resources with the facility directors to kind of just like see, is this something that's of interest? Is this something that could work? And then bring in the finance team at a later point. But there are some school business offices that really are hands-on with facility planning, construction planning from the get-go. And it's for those folks where I would say that this tool would certainly be helpful. I would say trainings that are specific to school districts are going to be really helpful. As far as opportunities to collaborate, with our association, it may be a bit of a struggle to do something that's like live and kind of pull people together like immediately right now. But if you are open to doing like recorded content where it's like, hey, we did a training, here is a recording and something that, we could push out to our folks, and then there's a contact to follow up with more information. We'd definitely be interested in that. And I just say, because obviously we're a month away from our annual conference, as Jonathan and Sarah had mentioned earlier with the session they're doing. But Sarah, if this resource is something that that you want to include in your presentation, just because you're already there, to get it in front of our folks, by all means.
Great.
But thank you. This is fantastic. I'm excited.
Yeah, that's incredible feedback. I really appreciate that. And we will kind of bring that back. That's not unlike what I thought. Just a couple points. There will be recordings available on our website. So those will be available on our main website as soon as they're done. And then happy to talk more about what a targeted training might look like after they've looked at a recording. Only other thing I'll say is that I always push and advocate to get those finance officers in the conversation as quickly and as early as possible, because the more they know, the better the process works.
Totally heard and totally agree. I mean, I think it's most of our communications around this has just been educational, like increasing awareness around it. And as soon as the business office does realize like just the potential for the sheer amount of savings, then they're like, oh, you have my attention. So definitely hear you on that.
Excellent.
Thank you, Elika, for coming off. Thank you, Jillian, for being here, and mostly for building this awesome tool. We're excited to help you make it better and more schooly. So
yeah, absolutely. And I'm very excited to the feedback that you might provide to Sarah on your own feedback form, because we are growing and iterating and evolving the tool.
Awesome. Okay, Jonathan, I'm late passing over to you to talk about our another resource spotlight, our new database. Off to you.
Awesome. Are you guys seeing a slide that says schools and the Inflation Reduction Act? Great. Thank you,
Yes.
Sarah and Jillian and Elika and everyone for that conversation. I'm excited to see that tool roll out. So some of you may have seen last week as we were celebrating the 2nd anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, we had a significant milestone in our little undaunted world and hopefully our network where we published the first database of eligible elective pay projects at schools. And so we wanted to talk a little bit today about why we're doing that again and kind of dive into the map that's on our website, the Tableau site, and just kind of show you what it can do a little bit, and then share some thoughts on how we think we want to invite and aspire to collaborate and continue stewarding and building this resource for the field. So for us, this database is part of a broader campaign to help schools make the most of this generational opportunity in the Inflation Reduction Act, like many of you all, with all kinds of important outcomes for our climate, for our children, for like the bottom line of school districts. And the specific, this database, like we hope that it can be the authoritative source, in our field of eligible projects underway at public schools. And so we want to track the projects through their life cycle, from planning to pre-application, all the way to filing to receiving funds. We want to be able to start to see over time the value of the projects and the tax credits. And we think that we'll be able to see sort of the take up of the technologies and the applicability of the different kinds of credits across different geographies where we're all working in, so that we just really believe that this can be a really valuable resource for the field. So we're trying to build awareness, we're trying to inform implementation, and having this resource showing the breadth of the impact of the IRA across the country will also help us, should we need to defend this policy and and keep these tax credits in place. And I think it was at the White House summit a few months ago, I think Anissa asked a question around kind of releasing the tax filings, and the Treasury and the White House were very clear, like they are not going to release information on filings. They are relying on outside groups to track progress. And so this is us sort of leaning in, to hopefully collectively sort of answer the call there and build this resource. So, quick current status. Hopefully you got some of this in an email. We released, 126 projects in 28 states. The map has technology location, key dates, tax filing status. It has, contact information and project artifacts. Every project has a link to something that we found that shows, either it's a media story or a board artifact. And we'll be continuing to add more projects and updating, information in the database. So I think with that, maybe Sky, I'll stop sharing and invite you to kind of give us a quick tour.
Great.
Is that right?
All right. Can you all see my screen okay? Maybe a couple of thumbs up. Awesome. All right. So this is the landing page to the schools and IRA projects that we have been working on. Now, I just clicked right through, but if you're visiting from our landing page, you can hover over the Inflation Reduction Act on the nav bar, and it's right down here at the bottom, schools and IRA projects. So here's our first image of our database. And if you scroll down here, you'll see a little bit of just some notes to help kind of frame how you should use this data, what's included and what the limitations are of the data. So I think some key things to think about as you're starting to look into the data are these limitations here. So we don't have access to real-time information on these projects. Construction projects timelines may change, project scope may change. So we recommend reaching out to district leaders before sharing any specific project details. And if you have information on a project, we would welcome you to share it. And we have a link down here where you can share any updates. But it's just a good practice to do a little bit of digging, see if there's any project updates before sharing this information out with anybody else. Another limitation is that the specific tax credit amounts are not included yet. Districts are still kind of working on getting reliable data, so we will add this as soon as it becomes readily available and trustworthy. And then the last piece is just something that kind of goes on what Jillian was saying about the no excess benefit. There may be certain situations and conditions where a project seems like it may be eligible for elective pay, but based off of a no excess benefit or an ownership change, that project would not be eligible. So as we learn more information and receive updates on these projects, we will move them through the pipeline of the project status. We'll add tax credit amounts, or in some cases, we'll remove projects from the data set if they no longer qualify. And you can read a little more on our kind of methodology note here. There's a button attached. Maybe we can drop it in our agenda as well. Now, looking at the database itself, right now we are highlighting 3 clean energy projects or clean energy technologies. We have energy storage, ground source heat pumps, and solar. And we're working to include EVs and EV charging equipment in the near future. And so what you can do is you can kind of zoom into a certain region on the map or a certain state that you want to learn more about what projects exist. And you can, we'll look at Wisconsin here for a minute. You can sort based on the clean energy property or eligible energy property just by clicking on the technology you want to look at. And then to get out of this view and to see all of the projects again, you just double click one of them and they'll all pop back up. Now, if you are looking for more specific information, you can hover over one of these colored icons and it'll give you a little bit of details into what that project actually is. So here we have an example of an energy storage project. Whoops, and pull it back up here. An energy storage project that's underway at Menasha Joint School District. You can see that has commenced construction, so the project is currently underway. It started in 2024. And then we have a couple of links here for this project where you can click out, it'll take you off of our landing page, and then you can see the most recent update or the most recent link that we have to kind of back up some of the details of that project. Some of the projects, there may be details in some of these public source materials, but we also, through building relationships with folks like you all, district leaders, we may update this information with relevant information that we gathered through relationships, and it may not all be reflected on these public news articles, but we include as many as we can to back up the data. And then if you're interested in sharing this data out, you can download an image or a PDF down here, this little download icon at the bottom. And there's also a link to share, to copy or embed this same view into another page. What we ask is that you don't use this share tool or share feature, and instead you direct people using our own URL. That way folks can take a look at what's included in the data, responsible use of it, and see our methodology note. I think that covers most of it. So I'm going to back up here and stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Thanks, Sky. Pause there. Any quick questions about what Sky shared or I shared? And then I want to reshare my screen and kind of get us into how might we collaborate to continue building this. And I should even say before I come off the mic, just a huge thank you to all the partners that helped us find I don't know the number off the 120 some projects that are in this database. This is reflective of, probably hundreds of conversations over months among us all to get these projects on the map. So thank you. Any questions? I'm gonna share. Then again. Okay, so some thoughts on how you could help. So there's 2 pieces here. One, we need to identify, more new projects as they come online, and 2, as Sky's saying, we can all work together to keep updating projects as they go through the life cycle. We hope to put in place and work with you all to to have some kind of framework for collaboration that motivates everyone, membership organizations, advocacy organizations, private sector partners to participate, that supports ease and accuracy, and that provides meaningful recognition to our partners in building this resource alongside us. And so we want to just kind of share some initial thinking on that as sort of a starting point, maybe get some initial reactions and comments today if we have time, and then kind of work with folks offline to kind of firm up where we head from here. And these slides are linked in the agenda. So first, on identifying new projects, this is about, you learn about a new project, you have an opportunity to qualify, you start to validate, whether that's through a conversation or you find some like public source, you gather some of the documents for it, and then you submit, as Skye said. Here's the link, it's on the website, but like all of us can add new projects. For a few partners have already said, hey, just give me a spreadsheet and we'll start, with the right fields, and we'll start to add some. So thank you to those of you. Thank you, Riley, Tish, Anissa and Phoebe. There are folks that are doing that kind of work with us already to identify new projects. Then there's going to be the follow-up time. So at Undaunted, we're a team of 5 people. We're not going to be able to have relationships with facilities directors, in all, in these, even in these 100 school districts. So to the extent that different organizations who have relationships or have capacity and interest in building relationships can help monitor and document and update and help us, keep the information current, that's great. I'm quite certain that there in the projects that we're displaying right now, there are probably updates. And whenever you see something, or there's like a status change, we really encourage you and ask that you share that with us as soon as possible. So those are the 2 big ways that we think, the work of stewarding and building this resource together. And then our thought is that, right now there is a sentence that thanks everyone for helping us do this work, but we'd like to go to a next place of recognition where for collaborators, and we thought the incentives might be a little bit different for nonprofit partners and for-profit or private sector partners, that we have some kind of recognition. We come to some agreement around how you are recognized, with some levels of recognition. It might be just the degree to which you are leaning in and identifying and updating projects, whether you're a for-profit or a nonprofit partners, and then you would be recognized on this landing page, like with logos, because we're clear this is not just our work. And then for private sector partners who are kind of leaning in and identifying and updating projects with us, we thought that we would be able to select a few private sector partners, who have some, kind of nexus to the database and are in this work with us to sponsor this project. This could be a full-time role at Undaunted, doing this for the next X years. And so we're looking to create some, like a revenue generating opportunity, to kind of sustain this work on the Undaunted side. So with, kind of more prominent recognition on the website, some kind of organizational profile with project highlights, and maybe some opportunity or the first invitation to sponsor follow-up case studies. And so this is our first time, we are a couple-year-old nonprofit organization. We haven't, put an idea out like this before, but thought we would kind of see how you all might be interested in collaborating. So for discussion, and I guess we have 5 minutes. Sarah, how do we want to use this time? This is kind of where we wanted to go with the conversation, everyone. So what I hope you're thinking about is, do you have some capacity to engage in this, either across technologies like, hey, we want to, like WRI, like, thank you for your collaboration on this already. Like, we want to keep working on electric vehicles, or Gen 180s, maybe thinking like Tish, maybe you're thinking like, oh, we can really work on Pennsylvania or Virginia where we're more on the ground. Like that's kind of how we're thinking about that. Are there people that really want to kind of raise their hand? What resources or assets do you have? In a conversation with Anissa, a week ago, Phoebe, she said something like, well, maybe we could do like a quarterly, email out to our sustainability directors network or our network, kind of saying, hey, any updates on projects? Here's what we have in the database, something like that. And then we just put on the table some different forms of recognition, but, would really, be open and interested in others' ideas about what would be viable or meaningful for your organizations. So I will stop sharing there. Maybe can we take like 2 minutes for a comment or a question, and then maybe we'll have to close. Anything out there?
I'll just share quickly. We're, as you know, Sarah and Jonathan, we're about to release our national data set of solar schools that have implemented solar projects up through the end of 2023. To the best we can in that data collection process, we add in funding data and we try to track that. So I think, and we use a similar process of, we try to use publicly available information. So I think the easiest part of the pipeline is kind of, we can help feed in those stories of, hey, there was a local news story about this school district that installed a solar array. They intend on using the tax credit. I think where we have had challenges in collecting data is tracking it through to the end. Because as you said, that takes a lot of effort. It's hard to get responses from those folks. So I think how you've laid it out is great, of being very upfront that, like, here's our source of our information, here's what we've seen, here's what got reported publicly, but then kind of following through with lots of these projects. And even as you'll see in our report, how we ended up framing it, because we had to, put pens down. Here's the data we were able to collect by the time we publish it. We were able to secure like 4 examples where they, confirmed, here's the amount we expect to get. And of course, none of them have gotten that money yet. So it's not, and say, like, here's how much money these 4 different school districts expect to get for projects that look like this. So it is, I think the harder part will be the follow through of, like, hey, we got the check, on a nationwide scale. That's a challenge. But yeah, we're in to help out.
Awesome. Thank you, Tish. Okay. Well, anyone else quickly for 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I think that at the national level, it's hard just because we're not tracking at this like minutia, and it's sometimes hard to understand who is actually using the credits for their projects without a little bit more deeper conversation. But what I think is valuable and that like incentive to actually participate is that a lot of these facilities directors or users are going to find this data valuable to be able to see, oh, other people are doing similar projects to me, or here's, there are energy and storage projects happening. So I think that might be an incentive for folks to participate. They see, like, oh, this is actually valuable for me as a user, and we're going to move forward with the project. We'll get back by actually participating. So we can kind of communicate it that way. That's, I think, how I'm going to pitch this a little bit.
Great. That seems right on. Okay, well, I think we should wrap up. Thank you all for joining us today for these conversations. We're thinking the next call will be October 1st. Thank you for the feedback on the playbook for state leaders. We're working to incorporate that and targeting a fall release. And just as a quick plug, this fall, we are really focused on raising awareness of IRA eligible projects in 7 key states: Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina. So if you have any overlap with those states and energy to help us add more projects to the database in those places, really appreciate folks focus on that this fall in partnership. So thank you very much for all of the good work that you all are doing around the country and being a part of this network. Anything else, Sarah?
Thank you.
All right, 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. See you guys in a month.
And
Thanks
everything in between.
a long way. Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye.